Hello, I'm Daniela from Sewing for a Living. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how I replace the elastic band on the waistline that is too loose. There are a lot of ways to do that, depending on the type of elastic band, the wave attachment, or the techniques used. I'm going to follow the technique that was originally used. At first, let's start with removing the old stitching that covers the elastic. It is a one needle cover stitch machine, which means that there are only two threads used to create the seam, one in the needle and one in the looper. Any seam that is created with a looping, no matter cover stitch or a serger one, can be easily removed by using essentially the same technique. What you need to do first is to break the needle thread, which usually goes on top. Then pull out several stitches in direction opposite of the direction of sewing. Be careful to determine the direction of sewing and go the opposite way, otherwise the looper won't start to unravel. Once you've pulled out 5 to 10 stitches, try to pull the looper thread on the inside. It should easily go off. I'm sorry it's not very easy to see because both the fabric and the thread are white. If the thread gets stuck, just pull some more stitches trying not to break it. Once you finish with the cover stitching, continue with the serger one. What I do is basically the same. Pull out several stitches of the needle thread, the one that goes as a straight line, and remove it. The looper one should go off by itself. Now this is a 3-thread serger, which means there is only one needle. A 4-thread serger would have 2 needles, so before unraveling the looper threads, make sure to remove both of the needle ones. Let's continue with replacing the old elastic with the new one. Mine is a bit more narrow, but this doesn't make a difference. Now, let's figure out how much elastic you are going to need to create a nice gathering. There are several ways to do that. The first one is to measure directly on the body, pulling the elastic enough so it is neither too tight or too loose. Another way is to use a size chart, but make sure it is for the elastic itself, not for the actual waist measurement. I've created this one and find it quite accurate. You can download it on the blog. The last way I'm going to show you works good not only for children but for adults too. It's very handy if you don't have a measurement chart or the actual person to measure on is not around. This results in a nice gathering of the fabric that is not too loose or tight. I usually just eyeball it, but if you feel more comfortable, use the measure tape. Once you've determined the desired length of the elastic, bring the ends together, overlapping approximately 3/4 to an inch or 2 centimeters, and sew the edges together. You can use straight or a zigzag stitch, whichever you prefer. Start pinning the elastic to the waist. I usually start at the back center seam. Then pin it to the front center seam and to the sides. This way the elastic will be evenly distributed and will create a symmetrical gathering of the fabric. The next step is to sew the elastic to the pajamas. When sewing, try not to pull it more than the fabric. Don't stretch the fabric, just the elastic band. I attached the elastic with a serger, so I've pinned some of the fabric to be cut out. If you use a zigzag or a stretch stitch on a regular machine, just align the edge of the fabric and the elastic. The most important thing is to make sure to use a stitch that tolerates stretching, so it doesn't break when the elastic is pulled out. We have the elastic attached, so the last step is to add finishing by cover stitching it. Pin it the same way as when attaching the elastic, at the center, back and front, and at both sides. If it is easier for you, add some more pins between those four. Make sure you are not leaving space between the edge of the elastic and the fabric. Finally, do the cover stitching. I prefer to do it at the bottom of the elastic, so it is fully covered. I use a 2-needle cover stitch machine that secures it well enough so one seam is fine. If you prefer, you might add a seam at the middle of the elastic to secure it. Once again, make sure to use a seam that tolerates stretching according to your sewing machine manual. And that's it. Now I have a happy kit with pajamas that fits. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If so, hit the like button below. I would be happy to see you at Sewing for a Living for more tutorials and free patterns. If you prefer, you can subscribe here or follow me on Pinterest or Twitter. Thanks for watching.